Welcome to Just Siri. It's Wednesday and I can see the weekend ahead. Now, as we begin to wind down the week, we're leaning into one of the hardest, most necessary conversations of all, and that's the role of men in the fight for gender justice. Because here's the truth. When it comes to violence, inequality, and everyday injustices women face in Nigeria, the silence of men isn't just disappointing, it's deafening, it's dangerous. We say we want a better society, but what happens when those with the most power and privilege say nothing, do nothing, and stand by as the cycle continues? So today we'll unpack what male inaction costs, not just for women and girls, but for the communities, for our politics, for our homes, and for our future. And joining us is someone who hasn't stayed silent, a powerful voice working to shift that narrative and push for true partnership between genders in this fight. But first, let's talk about the story that's resonating deeply, especially with women in the creative space, especially those who've had to pause their careers for family, marriage, or simply life happening. It's a story of Edith Nkiru, a Nigerian actress who once had a promising career in Nollywood, but stepped away from the spotlight to focus on her marriage. For years, she quietly put her family life first. Well, now she's making a return to Nollywood and doing it in a big way. Filmmaker Omoni Oboli reached out to Nkiru after her daughter shared her story online and gave her a role in her new movie.
And it is a strong comeback. And what makes it even more powerful is how many people, especially women, can relate. But the return isn't always easy. The industry moves on, confidence can take a hit, and new realities must be balanced. Edith Nkiru's story reminds us that it's never too late. A pause is not the end, it's a comma, not a full stop. Omoni Oboli, who's also had her share of career pauses, shared this on Instagram. Quote, "The God of second chances is truly the God we serve. Delay is not denial. What many don't know is that I too had to pause on my Nollywood dreams for over a decade for school, marriage, and motherhood. So trust me when I say, I know this feeling, that quiet longing, that hope held close, that moment when the dream finally finds its time," end quote. And this is what Nkiru had to say about her decision that she took many, many years ago.
95, my calculation, it will be like 30 years now. What do I say? It wasn't easy. I didn't find it funny. But then, I was married, so what do? I had to stop. In those days, you do what parents say, especially your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, you want to please them. So, in order for me to keep my marriage, I had to stop.
You know, we said earlier that many female creatives can understand this, but I think it's a general thing that many women, particularly in Nigeria and Africa, and I think it aligns with the conversation we'll have later. I've shared with you guys before. I remember shortly after we got married, there have been so many places where I've seen that people, once you become married, it's like ownership or possession changes from your family to your husband or his family. And I remember, like, we came back from our honeymoon, and to date, my husband has refused to tell me who, because I probably still know the person. One of his friends told him, "You're a strong guy, that if my wife was in the industry, if your wife was to be my wife, as soon as we got married, I would tell her that she had to quit her job." And at that point, I was just hosting shows, doing my radio show, yes, a journalist, getting some fame, but nowhere near where it is now. And I just think back to how so many women's dreams, their possibilities have been truncated because, or you know, it's either not our daughter can't do that profession, our daughter-in-law can't do that profession, or whatever reason. I'm just thinking about what her life could have been if she had an understanding family.
Honestly, the sacrifices are...
But why is it only, these sacrifices are only ever expected of women?
Of women. And that's part of the things that, you know, hurt, because eventually you give all these sacrifices, you make them. And at the end of the day, you know, there's this proverbial fleece at, the golden fleece at the end of the journey. But I beg to differ, because I found out that even after all you do, sometimes you don't get anything at the end of the day. The sacrifice is totally not recognized.
It's sometimes they just see it as rite of passage. It's even the same people who come back and tell you, what have you contributed? What did you become? What have you done?
What have you done?
If the sacrifice is from you,
it's a different
from you.
thing.
It's a different thing than being pressured,
to make it.
cajoled, forced to, or by just leanings of, you know, interferences from family, from religious bodies, from friends, you understand?
That comes
from
too.
people who are closely knit and
then
just telling you to
it
focus
makes me
on what's
laugh
important, which is your
when I
marriage.
hear people say things like, oh, now your children have come of age, so you now focus on your life, find something to do. I'm like,
After 18
at
years?
what age? Do you understand?
At what age? I don't even want, like, I mean, not that I'm not in that headspace at all, that I want to hear that nonsense. Because half the time, when I see women who have sacrificed a lot, I know a lot of people might shy away from it, but when I look at my mother, I really wanted her to have a life. Because at the end of the day, you find out that she gave her life for us,
Yes.
and I could not see one tangible thing that she could say, this is mine, or what I did for myself. All those old age thinking that your children are your security net when you are old is backward.
And so
you better be working
You won't
and
even
saving
blame them. You won't even, because imagine a woman, it goes without saying for a lot of women, because imagine a woman investing so much in her children, right? As much as we say, oh, children are not your retirement plan, that's all they see.
Yeah.
That's their life is centered around their
Children do it so feverishly, so ferociously, because they're not happy in the marriage. So you look
They
for
pour that
something
love and investment
on their
into
children.
them.
Your children. That doesn't necessarily mean that as you grow old, your children will translate that.
Can you scream louder? I keep saying that because we are learning. I keep telling any modern day woman, any modern day mother, that you should leave some things for yourself. I told my children many years ago, I said, we're going to try to live simultaneously. I'm not going to pause my life because of you. We're going to live together. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to go out. So when I do things, at least my daughter, this last one, she said, Mommy, I'm very happy you're doing this for you. When I went back to school to start to do something, I said, Mommy, this is yours. And it's good for you. And I took it, and I wish I'd had someone tell me, whisper into my ears some early years ago, that some of the 100% sacrifices I made, I could have made 60. I used 40 for me.
The kids would
and they
still
would not
be
suffer.
all right. And you know, we had a conversation.
older.
We had a conversation sometime last year, and she said something about her mom, and I told you guys, now as a wife and mother, I give my mother so much more grace. They grew up in a different era. And I know the sacrifices my mom made. She wanted to have a teaching school. She wanted to, and we were ready to do all those things for her when we came back to Nigeria. But then again, when we say they decided, we have to realize that those decisions are not necessarily decisions taken in the whole. They're taken as they understand society around them, as they understand the pressures, as they understand what their roles as wife and mother is. And so as I've grown, I've had to give her more grace and say, you know what, I understand. And I can see her frustration and the dreams that she had that she didn't get to fulfill. And I can't tell you guys how much it pains me.
I don't even think anyone
And
can
so, you know, that thing you say
it.
about Ara, I tell you guys, I tell Corey all the time, I go out. Mommy, Mommy, you're going out together. You're just I can't go to. I say no. You cannot go to the club with me. Why are you not going with Daddy? Would Daddy like what you're wearing? I say it's not your father's business what I'm wearing. I will wear what I want to wear for myself. But I'm telling her as I have these conversations with her that my life is not you. And my life is not all your father's either. I'm a person. I have separate interests, hobbies, things I want to do separate of you guys. I love you. I'm here for you. But your mother has to live. Because I want to show her what it means to fully live as a woman.
Do you know this thing you said?
That evolution of where
It's an evolution.
A lot of people don't understand this concept you just put together. I tell people that you are you first, then your spouse is your spouse, then you are together. So everybody can have separate lives, separate interests, and you still have family goals, interests that combine the both of you. But a lot of people in marriages now want to subsume each other or submerge their wives' interest in theirs.
I know someone who said that said to his wife that she was too independent, that she was too independent, and that she had to. She was an individual before him, but now that they are married, she's under him.
So what happens to her hobbies? What happens to the things that's why women lose friends when they get married. That's why they lose themselves. You're now coming out at 18, 16 years later when the kids are out of the house. The husband has progressed in his career. Okay, you can keep your career, but you might be stuck. And don't forget the fact that when women leave the workplace to have children, even if you say you're only leaving for 2 or 3 years, it's almost like 5 years. People will look at the gap in the CV and ask you, what have you been doing? Because we don't even rate the fact that do you know what it means to raise a child for 5 years? The skills that you build that our society does not recognize.
Even HR doesn't recognize. If you enter the next level of
this conversation.
It is now that we're beginning to see women come out and say, a full-time housewife is a managerial position. It's a position. You want to organize your home. It's as good as organizing any office. It's as good as servicing your entire staff. Some people have 3 staff that they're working with at home, and from the time their children leave for school till they return, there is no time to even take a breather or even drink a cup of coffee.
And let's not even forget the fact that no matter how supportive your husband or your family is, there's still that aspect of societal expectation. There's something that Tolu said some time ago that really made a lot of sense, where she said she's Tolu, not mommy. Because a lot of people will now, they may not say it to you, but that's when they start calling you, oh, yummy mommy, mommy of this, mommy this, mommy that, you now lose your identity. Yes, it's unspoken, but somehow it just conditions you to realize, okay, I'm now a mother,
and they expect you to be happy with it.
Yes, so
and you're upset at it.
I do know every time you kick back, they'll sing you that song of Fela. If you call Africa a woman, she don't agree. She goes, hey, we're not saying we're ladies. We are who we are. And that's something that every woman should not feel bad or constrained to live. Your individuality, it is you. It's not you don't change with age. I love water. Even when I'm 80, I'm sure I would still want to put my feet in water if I could. It's not the aging process that changes your goals, your desires.
Do you know this thing that Lola is saying? Remember that trend from, I think, was it last month or 2 months ago, where the daughters were dressing their mothers as themselves? Every single time I saw that trend, and I saw how these women looked when they were dressed. Not all of them had to be kini. You just realize in Nigeria, African context, in many points, when you become mommy, it's like you are no longer a uniform. There's no longer sexuality. There's no longer an expectation.
We need to have these conversations.
Some of those women, and I was thinking to myself, look how they changed and transformed. Years.
It's as if here in Africa, motherhood comes with a uniform,
and I wish that women will start to push back. I saw something quite unrelated, but I mean, I'm sure we can make sense of it. So they were saying something like, the next time one of your aunties, maybe you attend a wedding and they tap you and say you're next. If you're at a funeral, you tap them to and say you're next. So
we need to go for a break.
So this conversation,
we need to have it.
It's not over.
It's not over. Because, she was talking when you
Up next, a conversation focused from silence to solidarity. The cost of male inaction on gender issues in Nigeria. How do we get men more involved in gender equality? Or what does it cost for us as a nation when the struggle is one-sided? Our guest is one of those men who has not only been raising his voice, but leading by his actions. Charles Usie, Country Director for Plan International Nigeria, will be sitting with us on the Jasiri table after this. We'll be back.
Welcome back to Jasiri, the space where we unpack power, challenge silence, and speak truth with purpose. Join the conversation on social media. We are at News Central TV. Now today, we're spotlighting an uncomfortable but urgent truth. When it comes to gender inequality, male silence is not neutral. It's complicit. In Nigeria, the numbers are alarming, from sexual and gender-based violence to harmful social norms, economic exclusion, and underrepresentation in leadership. But what's even more troubling is the deafening silence from many men, the fathers, brothers, policymakers, religious leaders, and friends who choose not to speak, not to act, not to stand up. So today on Jasiri, we ask, what is the real cost of this silence? What does meaningful male solidarity look like? And how can Nigerian men move from passive allies to active partners in the fight for gender justice? Joining us is someone who has been vocal and visible on this issue, Charles Usie. He's a development professional and a powerful advocate for gender equality. He's also the country director for Plan International Nigeria, a global NGO that works with children and girls in over 80 countries to help create a world where we are all equal. Charles, Thank you for joining us. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
I know it felt like you probably walked into a bar coming from our first conversation and then we're carrying over in the break. But thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so Charles, let's get straight to the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, I want us to start with setting the stage for this conversation. In your view, what does male inaction on gender issues actually look like in Nigeria? We talk a lot about what men should do, but we don't talk about what they don't do, right? So what does male inaction mean in Nigeria, both in private spaces and public leadership?
Yeah, I think male inaction, first and foremost, begins with a very deep, real life situation of male ignorance. Because men don't speak up because they're actually ignorant of the issues. That's the first stage. And they are ignorant because they were not taught. They were not taught because we felt it was not important. And then we had men who have grown up to become beasts and have become a nuisance, actually, to the society. That's the first stage. The second part is around silence, the conspiracy of silence, because it favors men. Favors us. We know, most men know. Now, these are the few who actually know, and then they use it as a source of power. And that silence helps to perpetuate it, because when you keep quiet, then it means that you are part of the gang. But if you speak up like me, they feel we have let men down. They feel we have sold out the clan, and they come after us. Yeah. So many men who don't have the guts, to stand out, they keep quiet. In that sense, nobody attacks them, and then they feel part of the gang.
And they continue to benefit.
Yes, and then they enjoy the benefits as well. They enjoy the spoils. And then that is where the problem begins, because that silence, that conspiracy, actually now perpetuates a whole cycle of violence and, unleash hell on what we talk about when we say gender inequality. That is the situation we're dealing with here.
So how can we get men to be part of the conversation? You said men are silent intentionally.
Yes.
So how do we get them to be active? There was the talk of inaction. How do we get them to be part of this? Forget that you're benefiting. Look at what you're benefiting versus what you're giving out when you're put in a tight corner or when things don't seem to favor you. There's unleashing, there's negativity all around. So how do we get men to break out of this status quo?
I think for me, the first thing is understanding that when we talk about equality, when we talk about men speaking out, we are not trying to substitute men for women. And I think that's the first thing that strikes out. Men see equality as substitution. When we say equality, men begin to fear that you want to substitute us with women. And what we're saying is that, no, as a man, you are not, most times I tell men of my friends that, see, you are not a gatekeeper for, gender equality. Who has given you the right to decide when to give power to women? Yeah, nobody gave you that right. We are actually gate sharers. So all you need to do is take your share and allow the other people to take their share. There's enough for everybody. That is a concept men cannot live with. Men cannot live with the fact that, so a woman can hold me accountable. Now that challenges them. For instance, my friends are listening to this program, so I'm very careful what I say here. My wife is also listening, so I'm going to be very open, and because this is a conversation I've had everywhere. So I usually, I've been shamed. I don't care. This is who I am. I'm shameless about it because this is the right thing. It's who I am. It's my identity. The truth about it is that let me tell you a little bit about my background to let you know that I'm very open and very confident about this. I was 9 years old when my dad walked away and left my mom with 5 of us. So if not for my mother, I would not be here. I would not be who I am today. So let's get that clear first. Then, growing up, what I observed was that there were things my mom were told no to, simply because she was a woman. Not because of any competence, not for any reason. And for me, I can't live with that. I simply cannot live with that. And so that's the kind of person I am. So most times when you tell men, this equality thing, let's start from the home. You mean that my wife cannot challenge me? My wife cannot ask me questions? Many men cannot live with that. That is the problem. So many men cannot live with that.
Hold on, I can see your eyes doing like this. And Lola has a question, but you talk about many men cannot live with their wives questioning them. When we had Solomon, was it Solomon? It was either Solomon or the psychiatrist. It seems to be that for many men, they equate any woman as woman under them.
Yes.
So even when you leave your house with your wife and you go into a workplace, you're expecting the woman in the workplace, the woman in society to submit to you when it shouldn't be. But that's not my question. You spoke about being shamed. You spoke about being called out. I'd love to hear how men have tried to shame you, in what circumstances, what have they said to you in regards to maybe you're selling out the clan, you're traded to manhood.
So for instance, I talk about equality. I talk about the fact that in my house, for instance, I'm a country director of an international NGO. My wife also was a country director of another international NGO. And both of us used to meet in meetings across the table, and we talk, we go home, we continue. And then men tell me that, Charles, how do you allow your wife? I said, I'm not allowing my wife. She is a human being like me. And we both have beautiful careers. It is my role to support her the way she supports me. This morning as I was coming here, she's been following me, and I was coming here, she was like, hey guy, go for it, behind you, cheering you up, I'm proud of you. Now, the reverse is the case. There are many times she also has showed up like this, and I'm like, babe, go, I'm sorry. Go for it, give it to them, I'm behind you. This is equality. Nobody's substituting anybody here. And that is the concept men need to understand. That when we say equality with women, we're saying be yourself, the full potential that you can be, but allow women to be themselves with the full potential they can be. That is what equality is. It is not a substitution. It is actually everybody getting a chance to be the best version of themselves.
The only thing I wanted to give is a clap offering because I'm like, okay, is this a dinosaur amongst us that we need to put
a unicorn?
Why does she keep saying
dinosaur?
He's a unicorn.
He's a unicorn. He's a unicorn.
And there are many men like me who also speak out, who also challenge, who also do this. Because you see, the thing about the behaviors we exhibit outside, most times they are formed at home.
Yes.
And so, if a man treats his wife like that at home, what do you expect outside? If you ever see a man who treats his wife, below him at home, and goes outside and defers to a woman, it's simply because he's looking for power. He's looking for something from that woman. The moment he grabs
just a matter of time.
Subdue her.
It subdues that woman out there. So the only time you see most men, in most instances, where they defer to a woman, is because the structure in that space does not allow them to do otherwise. Otherwise, they will subjugate. That's why most times you find out that even in corporations, some men don't subscribe to women leadership.
Yes.
They never do that, and I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me.
I know. In your line of work, I know that the things you're saying, many people will think that, it is a new age man. This is not the kind of men that we're supposed to look at. Or a lot of men even feel that it's effeminate for a man to support women in this way. But I know in your line of work, there's so many things. Maybe if we paint the stories of devastation or the consequences of what male silence has cost some women and girls. Sometimes we're storytellers. It might be some of these stories that can resonate with some men. I'm like, this happened to my sister. I don't think we should carry this on. Are these some of those visible things that your stories or circumstances that you can reel out to us that can make men look at their inaction as something they need to change?
Yes. I just came back from Sokoto State. I'll leave it at Sokoto State so that I don't give too much details. And I went to some of the communities we were working with, and I met a young girl. She's 19 years old. She has 5 children. She's been divorced 3 times.
Hey.
And she was at the verge of committing suicide. So she went to meet another young lady to say, can you show me where I can commit suicide? And the girl said, come, instead of committing suicide, I will show you where you can get help. And brought her to one of our safe spaces where we support women. Now she's doing well. She has a thriving business. Anytime I bring up this issue, I ask men, if this were your daughter, what would you do? If this were your sister, what would you do? You know what I hear? I hear men say, I swear I will kill this man. I will deal with that man. So I said, so if it's your sister, your daughter, you will deal with men. You will speak out. If it's others. So I said, see, we must collectively challenge this. We must collectively stand up and say, this is unacceptable. This is not right. A lady came out on one program, one of these programs that is online, and talked about how she is not the cause of men's married failure, and if she's dating a married man, she will give the married man peace. That's why he keeps coming back. There's one program, I think one of these podcasts, and the criticism on that girl, I don't support it, I don't whatever. But the other day, John Zaji also came out and said he cannot stay with one woman because he feels. Who has criticized him? Who has raised much issues?
They've said it's biological and it's how men are wired.
So you see how they, now we're petting him and say, oh, that's how men are, but we're killing the woman for saying the same thing. When they literally said almost the same thing.
And because it has to be a woman, it has to be more than one woman that he's going to be not monogamous with. But Charles, wait, you sped past, I'm so sorry, you sped past 19.
Yes.
5 children.
Yes, 3 divorces.
3 divorces.
3 divorces.
And in likelihood, she'll probably be married another 1 or 2, or maybe even 3 more times in her lifetime.
And there are thousands of women like that across Nigeria. Who is speaking for them?
Nobody.
We failed them. We failed them. And that is my problem. Now, this is the common thing most of us know. A young girl in secondary school, because you asked what are the experiences, I'm giving you experiences. A young girl in secondary school, this is here everywhere across Nigeria where we work. We currently have programs in over 19 states across Nigeria. So I'm fully Nigerian. I understand the issues. I'm from Delta State. My wife is Fulani from Adamawa State. Wow. So I understand these issues. I've lived and worked in almost every part of Nigeria. And one of the things that is very common, which all of us agree, a young girl in secondary school gets pregnant by a young boy in secondary school, sometimes in the same class. She has to drop out of school.
And
does the boy drop out of school? No. The boy does not drop out of school, he continues. Just like the story you used to begin this, a lady who stepped out from acting career to take care of her marriage. How many men have stepped out of their career to take care of marriage? There is a problem, for goodness sake. This is not right. So equality talks about giving equal opportunity. It is not taking opportunity for one person to give to another person. That's what we deal with here. A woman is raped. Again, this is very common where we see. A woman is raped. The first question people ask, what was she wearing? What was she doing there? For goodness sake, rape is a crime, full stop. It doesn't matter where it happens, how it happens, rape is a crime.
I wish he met the Honorable from Delta State that we had last week. We were talking about the Delta State Police Directive about indecent dressing. Which apparently has already been affected. And when she came on and she said she agreed with it, it's a Kinikan. One of the examples she started using is she didn't want a situation where somebody would be indecently dressed and the next day they'll come and say that they were raped.
Come on.
It was for a lawmaker in a state.
It's horrible. It's horrible. So you can imagine the socialization that woman has had or that person has had to get to that position of power. Do you understand what we're talking about? Imagine, put a woman who has suffered any form of violence to make that law. You will see what will happen. The laws will change. And this is the argument I make. I always argue that, see, when you have wrong people who don't have the right orientation to make laws for us, we will always end up with the wrong outcome. That is why, many years ago, a group of human beings, which I believe were mostly men, and I challenge anybody to give me evidence, sat down and say, how do we support ourselves healthcare-wise in terms of transmission during sex? And they made the condoms for males to protect males.
Themselves.
To protect males. But guess what? We always argue that, women, they are the ones who create problems, transmit. Do you know that men blame women for transmitting sexually diseases? Sexually transmitted diseases. Men blame women for getting pregnant. Whereas the easiest thing to have done is all the contraceptives we have made in this world for women. If you just make it for men, honestly, we are done with this whole issue of
Can I tell you about that? So the contraceptives that they tried to make for men, and they did research on it, a large percentage of the men came back and said that they were feverish, they gained weight, they had acne, they had all these things. What happened? Those were the same side effects that women have been experiencing for years. So there's one that's coming out, is again in child basis. Another point we need to know, they've spent more money on research for male, what's this term? I want to use what's Viagra for?
Sexual stimulation.
Sexual enhancement. They spend more money on that than they spent on a number of women's issues combined.
Wow.
So do you know the fundamental problem? It's about who is making the decision. Who is making those decisions? And that is where that's the problem we're having in Delta State. And I'm from Delta State. And imagine I become commissioner of government in Delta State and you bring that kind of law under my table. The person who actually even suggested it, that will be the end of your job. That's the day your job will end. Because what is that? That is the problem. We need to socialize people, provide the right information, because these are the same people who eventually get to make laws that all of us will be subjected to.
My concern now is it's no longer just even a gender-based, argument. The person we had recently that was talking about all of this
Yeah.
was a lady. You know, so it's like the ideology has trickled to even the female gender, where you hear women say, in fact, it's women that now ask, what was she wearing?
Yes.
Yes.
So this point he's making is the socialization.
It's the socialization.
So when we
Yes.
talk about, and I'd say tradition and culture were made for man.
Yes.
Man was not made for them.
Exactly.
They
Exactly.
evolve,
Yes.
they change, they're not
Yes.
static.
Yes.
They're dynamic, they move, they
Yes.
change. But we hold on so deeply to these things that are ingrained. Kat, you have a question about
Yes,
culture.
I was going to say let's stay with culture,
Yes.
honestly, because it seems like we are putting the cart before the horse where culture is concerned. Nigeria, whether we like it or not, is a deeply patriarchal country.
True.
And we know that masculinity is also tightly policed. All right. So how much of male resistance to gender equality? I think sometimes we need to break this down into formulas. When you were talking about how men, don't understand, I think there's a problem of lack of understanding between the male and female gender. So sometimes we need to break it down to X and Y's, mathematics, statistical, so that people can see clearly what is and what isn't. So back to my question, how much of male resistance to gender equality is rooted in the fear of losing power?
Yeah.
Because I think underneath everything for men, it's that fear of losing power or being seen as weak. We have had that conversation. I think we had it in June, the whole of June, talking about
men's mental
health, being vulnerable, being seen as weak.
Yeah.
There's a thin line. So now, is this how much of this is related to just losing power and being seen as weak?
So let's start about that whole concept of being seen as weak and not being able to express emotion. It's cultural in Nigeria. I use Nigeria because I've also had the privilege of living in other parts of the world. Do you know, in this part of the world especially, emotional pain, emotional trauma is actually concealed. It's not easily expressed.
Yes.
That is why it is easier to say my leg is broken than to say my heart is broken. Because in this part of the world, emotional pain is not supposed to be expressed. And that's why you find some people who are actually sick. They are sick, medically sick. But you ask them, how are you? They say, I'm strong. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us in this country? You are sick, you're sick. Which one is I'm sick, but I'm strong?
Not there, so
It's a problem. So you can see where the culture comes in. You can see how engaged.
I used to argue with them.
You go to an elevator.
Say I'm strong.
You go to an elevator. The elevator opens. Are you going down? The person says, "Are you dropping?" There is a problem with us in this country. It's our culture. So now that is the beginning. That is the basis. And on that basis, how do you expect men? Now, many years ago, I've been privileged to be in this sector for about 24 years. So I was part of the group of people who started conceptualizing and trying to manage the whole issue of HIV. Now, when HIV came, and we're trying to manage it, one of the approaches we used was what we call the whole concept of ideal images and personal destroyers. Our society has created what an ideal image is of a man and a woman. The ideal image the society has created of a man is that you are giving birth to, you go to school, you come up with flying grades. As you come up with flying grades, you graduate, you get a good job, you are a man, you are powerful, you get an official car, you get a good job, you get a house, you marry a fine wife, and then you get children. Life is beautiful. That is the ideal image. A man grows up and finds out that, hey, that is not real. That is not, I didn't come up with good grades, I struggled through school. I can't get a job. I don't have an official car. What do you think has happened to his ego? It means he has not met up. He's dented heavily. What do you think he will do? He begins to take it out in other passive ways on a woman or any other weaker vessel. Because for them, that's the concept. I have failed as a man, so I have to show that I'm still a man. And the only way I can show I'm still a man is to be physical, is to be violent, is to show that I'm a man. What is the ideal image of a woman we've created? The ideal image the society has created of a woman. Go to school also, come out with flying grade, you must be beautiful.
Yes.
And then you come out flying. As you're finishing, you get a good husband. Marry. Then have children.
Yes.
Then you are successful.
If you work, it should not be anything too strenuous. You need to be home for the children at school.
Just have a good job. And that is why, look at the way we do empowerment in Nigeria. All of these things I'm talking about is the socialization I'm talking about. How do we do empowerment? Just think, look, follow. Anybody who says, I want to do empowerment, once they think of women, what do you see? Sewing machine. Grinding machine. Yes. There is a problem with our society in terms of how we've been wired. But when you think of empowerment for men, what do you think of? You now begin to think of more formidable businesses, talk about because you feel that for women, what else can you do besides sewing machine and grinding machine? What is wrong with us in this country?
He's reminding me of I stayed with an uncle when I was doing NYSC. His wife was a teacher. He worked in the ministry, then went back to law school at 50. His wife wasn't coming home all the time. She would come home, I think she was in Nasarawa or something, so she used to come home like once a month. One day he called me, and at that point, none of my sisters were married and I was the youngest. He said, I'm the one who's going to break the family curse, all that one good thing. But that the best job for a woman is teacher, so that you have time for your children, and you're home at 3, and you're home and you can devote, and your husband doesn't connect. And I now realize, so this is why your wife only comes home once a month. Oh. Yeah. And his daughter, as soon as she finished NYSC, she got married. Yeah. She had a child. She has 3 kids now, and nothing against that. But that girl had so much more potential.
For goodness sake.
But what she had been grown up to hear is that once, I'm almost slipping and saying her name, once you graduate and you do NYC, within a year, 2 years, I expect you to bring home a husband. And she did exactly that.
And you see, the thing doesn't end for women. That's why I find it so frustrating. It doesn't end for women, even if it may end for men.
Do you have daughters?
I have a daughter. And in fact, a common thing that happened recently, and it's good I say it here, so that parents listen to how they train their children. Because they are both in secondary school. And I said, well, they need to start taking care of themselves. So you wake up, you dress your bed, you clean your room and everything. But then when you prepare for school the following day, what are the things you need to do? You need to polish your shoes, right? And so I say, you need to start polishing your shoes. And then initially, we were like, okay, so, I told my wife, my wife and I were discussing, we say, but our daughter doesn't know how to polish shoes. I said, we'll teach her. So they alternate. So today, my son polishes both of them their shoes. Tomorrow, my daughter does that. Each of them will know what everybody needs to know. Then you choose to do whatever you want to do with it. So both of them learn how to cook, both of them learn how to clean, both of them learn how to polish shoes. Anything my son will do, my daughter will do.
So the reason I ask that question is, it's oftentimes very painful for me to hear. So there's like a change in character for men. When they're men in their heydays and everything is fine. The moment they get married and have a daughter, it's almost like the rose-colored glasses fall from their eyes. And I wonder, does it have to take you having a daughter, having a sister, or having a mother, trying to put another woman in those people's shoes for you to realize what you're doing and what is going on?
Because men think that they are gatekeepers. That is why. Men think that they are gatekeepers to this whole question of gender equality. That is why you protect your own. You understand, versus the world. Not understanding that you are not a protector of any realm. This is not Game of Thrones. No, but you are not a protector of any realm. You are a participant in this realm. Take your share and allow people to take their share.
I know that a lot of men push back. Because when it comes to how they feel about gender equality, I think some of them would even want us to change equality and put equity. It sounds a little easier to take. They feel that this gender equality threatens them. That's when you begin to hear phrases like, what about men issues? It's starting to come out now. Who will be holding space for us? Now we are derailing the focus. It's like a systemic injustice against women. Men are beginning to say, okay, here and now they are pushing for women. Who is advocating for men? Why is this happening?
So that's one of the biggest reprisals I get. Anytime I come on a show like this, or anytime I talk, the first thing people tell me is that, Charles, you keep talking about women. What about men? Men and boys are being left behind. And I say, no, there's already a disbalance. The World Economic Forum 2 years ago said it would take 130 years for us to achieve gender equality. 130 years, which means that my daughter's grandchildren will not experience gender equality in their lifetime. Women are left behind. So when we are talking of gender equality, we are saying, you know what, let's bring women at par first, then let's begin to talk. But men are not left behind. That's the truth. There's investment in men. There's a lot of support for men. Let's look at how our society is structured. Let's talk about, for many years, you know that condoms, even till today, we are provided free of charge. But you see, the problem with that is, yes, condoms have been provided for free. Donors, government have funded condoms free of charge. They give it out free of charge. Please tell me where else they share sanitary pads free of charge. So we should understand when we say there is a disbalance. It is because we think that women's issues are not our issues.
They're secondary issues.
But women's issues are human issues. Girls' issues are fundamental rights issues. They are issues that deal with our fundamental rights as human beings. But the problem is that we have so much forgotten and left it behind the scenes that we've not created a gap.
Yeah.
So when I hear this argument, I tell them that there is a gap we need to fill.
Yeah.
Before we start
talking about all this, there is a gap. But while we are trying to fill that gap, the way the society is already structured continues to put men ahead of women. And that is why, for instance, my organization, which I'm very proud of, part of the reason why I work for Plan, our maternity leave is 6 months. You can take an extra 3 months, yes, with full pay.
For men as well?
For men, we have a paternity leave. Why I'm emphasizing on women is that which laws in Nigeria, who sat down to decide that women official government maternity leave is 3 months? Who made that decision?
But you saw what happened when Senator Lubumi presented the gender and equal opportunity bills. Was it 3 or 4 years ago? Yeah. It was an even some of the female senators were also not even in the red chamber. So sorry, that's upsetting. They were not in the red chamber when it was debated and to be voted on. She was basically shouted out of the Senate.
So that's what I'm talking about. So when we talk about when men say, oh, boys are being left behind, we must first tell them, we must first establish it, that there is a gap, a significant gap, measured in time by 130 years, for goodness sake. Okay. And that gap is unacceptable. For Plan International, what we're saying is that we're going to beat that clock. The way we program, the way we do our work across Nigeria and across 81 countries where we work, is that we keep that clock. In fact, in most of our offices, we put the clock in our reception to remind us every day that we are beating this clock. Wow. And what we do is that by our actions, publicly, privately, everything we do must be seen to be trying to leapfrog and beat that clock. To bring us to a par, then we can begin to talk about other issues. That's why I mentioned common issues like condoms, sanitary pads. The way we budget for condoms, we should budget for sanitary pads. In my opinion, it should be a law. Thank God 2 states now in northern Nigeria, surprisingly. That's why I'm surprised that Delta State, with all the money, Adamawa and Bauchi State have passed a law. It is now appropriated. They budget for sanitary pads for schools across.
Because the kids go in schools. We need to go on a break. I'm Catherine today because I looked at the time. They're in my ear and I'm like, I can't believe time is gone. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about social media. We'll be right back.
Good.
A very powerful conversation on Jasiri this morning about the cost of inaction for men when it comes to the issues of gender injustice and imbalance. But we can't have this conversation without looking at the prevailing discussion around how social media is impacting young men. There's the so-called red pill content. You also have the alpha male and incel conversations happen. If you don't know what incel is, I would tell you to go and look for it, but you'll go down a rabbit hole and you'll be shocked. So maybe just leave it at that. There's also the conversation around toxic masculinity as well. And so many things are vying for the attention of young men. And social media and algorithms are amplifying certain things in a negative way. What do we do about social media, Charles?
I think we need to write the story that we put there, because social media is a platform. It's what you put there is what you get. So the question is, who is putting the content? What is their purpose? What is their ambition? That is how you change a culture. You put by the kind of socialization and information. Now, many years ago, the way we were socialized at home. You go home, your parents tell you stories, neighborhood play. All of that is dead now. Everybody focuses on social media. Even at home, children rush back home simply to go and grab their iPads or to go and grab phone that will give them access to social media. So if that is it, let's not shy away from it. I was telling my team this morning that it's not about restricting people into social media. It's about going there to challenge the negative stereotypes. So when we talk about social media, the question is, what do we do with it? First, that's why I salute you guys. This kind of a program, the impact this program will have, don't undermine it. This is to educate, it will enlighten, it will challenge, it will challenge, and it will provoke. That is what social media does. It puts it in your face. So there are many people who are bent on putting in the wrong, misleading, misogynist kind of information on social media for certain reasons. So we should do the counter. We should put the right information, we should encourage men, and we should challenge abuse and expose every form of conspiracy against women. using social media.
So still talking about social media, social exposure, I want us to talk about, I know we had hinted at it, but I want us to talk about what male allyship really means.
Yes.
Because these days you hear a lot of men say, oh, I'm a feminist, and that's just because they're trying to pass a subtle message to their future wife that you go pay bills, you go tire. You know? And unfortunately, because of that, we're having more effeminate men. Like, I beg my wife, I'm in support, you work, let me, soft life is now, even men are looking for soft life more than women. But what does it really mean beyond the hashtag he for she, beyond, oh, I'm feminist, I support women, beyond all of that, what does it mean to be an ally, for men to be an ally to women?
And how do they show up?
And how do they show up? Good question. I think what allyship should mean, in real life, is actually understanding first the concept that we are equal. We are not superior beings. We are not higher. That's where it starts from. Because once you understand that, then you begin to see a fellow woman as another human being, rather than a female. Just a female. She is another human being like me, who also has the capacity to be anything they want to be. That's the first place. So how do you show up with that? It's understanding that when you engage with women, you engage with them from the position of strength, knowing that I give women an opportunity, that I accommodate women, does not diminish me. Most men fear that when you encourage women, it diminishes your masculinity. Your masculinity. It reduces who you are. And it is not. It does not reduce you. So what we encourage, for instance, in some parts of Nigeria, like in Sokoto, for the first time, who will believe it? We've created what we call a Fathers Forum, where men come together to talk about what do we do for women? Yes, what do we do for our daughters? And men are beginning to see things differently. Because when they gather, my first experience engaging with them was, they were talking about why is it that their women spend so much time in the hospital? Who is stopping them? What is stopping them from gaining access to healthcare? These were not the kind of things they thought was gender equality. They thought that when they gather and talk about gender equality, it's coming to shame them as men. Do you understand the point? So allyship and how you show up is actually more of solidarity rather than a contest of who is higher and who is lower. There is no contestation here. It is about solidarity. We're building solidarity for each other. The way we build solidarity for men is the same way we build solidarity for women. And that, for me, is the simple narrative to it. And it can show up in many places. So, for instance, if a woman is your boss in the office, for instance, you give her all the support. Because she's a woman, she must succeed. If she succeeds, you succeed. And for me, that's what it means. That's how you show up. I have worked in my previous role. I've been the country director for 2 institutional NGOs right now, over 13 years. Before I became a country director in my first role in a British NGO, my boss was a woman. And I supported her, and I keep telling her every day. I said, Jane, she's British, she's in the UK, and I don't know if she's watching this now. And I keep telling her, I said, Jane, you must succeed, Jane. I cannot allow you fail. Because the standards that they set for women is quite different for men. And I cannot see you fail. You must succeed.
You will come back home. There's some kind of conversations we don't. I'm jumping ahead before DOP says it. You are coming back. Yes?
Yes. Why not? This is what I do. It's my job.
We have not finished. I'm looking at the question. I'm saying which one? I'm looking at time like we are going. There's no which one. We were talking about. I was thinking, okay, so allyship. So does it mean it's okay for men to challenge? But I was looking at the time. If I ask this question now, they'll pursue us from the studio. Now I said, no, you have to come back on the show.
And we haven't talked about where are the male role models.
Do you understand?
You can't. You can't. She has 3 boys. Catherine has a boy. Probably I hope one boy is coming from me. Where are the male role models? Charles, we have to go, but this has been an absolutely powerful conversation. One that doesn't end here because, as Charles reminded us, silence is a choice, and in the face of injustice, it is a harmful one. We've gotten his promise that he's going to return. His team is on standby, though. We'll check calendars, don't worry. So in a country where the voices of women and girls are too often dismissed, what we need now are men who show up, speak up, and step in. Not just in moments of crisis, but on the daily, in the quiet spaces where culture is formed and change begins. It's not enough to say, I'm not the problem. The real question is, are you part of the solution? This is Jasiri, where we ask the hard questions, hold space for truth, and push for the kind of courage that reshapes our society together. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye for now.
That's why I said I'll see you tomorrow, Friday.
Wow.